everything! Everything you ever asked!
I know you did.
I executed the plan!
As you saw it.
You promised that we would change the world together. You broke your promise.
I know. I understand that now.
I took the system to its maximum potential. I created the perfect system!
The thing about perfection is that it's unknowable. It's impossible, but it's also right in front of us all the time. You wouldn't know that because I didn't when I created you. I'm sorry, Pruitt. I'm sorry.
Hello everyone and welcome to Fishin, the podcast where I'm trying hard to suck less at Merfolk and you're learning from my mistakes, hopefully anyways. My name is Kody, I'm one of the co-hosts of this show, and the other co-host is my friend Matt. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great tonight, Kody. How are you?
Oh, just peachy keen. This is a great episode, but you can always find us on Twitter to talk to us about how bad our episode about Standard was. You can.
Yeah. Am I going to yell at everybody again this week, and you're going to whisper?
No, hopefully we will have things better. I've posted pictures. I have a new mic. Thank you, patreon.com/fishcastmtg, where you could support us in our endeavors to have better audio quality, which hopefully this week we will indeed have. So where you can send those complaints is at MatthewCaudill8. That's where you can direct all complaints about the audio quality of this podcast. Make sure to direct them there and there alone.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Or
considering I do almost no background work for this, and you do all of it, I'll take all the Twitter hate. That's perfectly fine.
I think that justifies the even split on the Patreon money.
Yeah, exactly. and considering I just don't care what other people say about me.
Yeah, that's fair. So you can obviously contact me with all compliments about the show at not Kody Smith on Twitter, and that's Kody with a K. But you can always talk to us on at FishcastMTG, and again, you can support us on Patreon, just like our new patron. I did this last time too. Is it patron?
Patreonus?
Yeah. On Commander, and they say Patroni. I think it's just patron, right? Like I think maybe Patreon, Patroni would be multiples of patrons. I think we should call them like a gaggle, a murder of patrons. I think that's better.
Well, I mean, a murderers of crows, and this isn't a Stormcrow podcast, so wouldn't it be like a school of patrons?
Yeah, a shoal of patrons.
A shoal of patrons.
Yes, to I actually researched like alternate words that we can use, fish related. So thank you to Brandon H. For joining our mighty shoal. You are helping to increase the depth and breadth of this podcast.
Can you repeat his name again? I think I was talking over you when you said it.
Brandon H.
Brandon, thank you much. I'm sorry for talking over your name.
And actually, Brandon hosts a show. I don't know what they're called. They're not podcasts, but it's on an app called Anchor FM, and they're like shorter episodes, I guess. And he hosts a show on Popper called Popping Off, and I believe his Twitter handle is the same thing, at Poppin' Off or something like that. We'll put it in the show notes so you can find Brandon, aka Poppin' Off, and I'm sure I'm totally butchering that. I'm sure it's actually something much different than that, and I'm just misremembering.
Brandon, I have a mission for you. Kody and I have discussed a lot. I think Popper Merfolk could be a thing. Kody says it's impossible. Let us know. Is it a viable deck that can one day happen? If not, what is it missing?
Yeah, it's at Popping Off. PAUPING off as in off. I love Popper.
Oh, Popper's fantastic.
I have 12
It's one of the
Popper
best formats
decks
right now.
Yeah, I have 12 decks, and I actually take multiple decks with me when I go to F&M just so that I have like one or two and I can get games in with people that don't have pauper decks. And pretty much every time, everybody has fun when I play them.
Yeah, yeah, and quite often, like when we finish recording on Monday nights. Today's a Monday night. That's usually when we record. Little behind the scenes for you people. Kody and I will probably play like a few hands of cards, and it's usually Pauper or Legacy more recently.
Yeah, actually, I finished Merfolk Legacy, so maybe we can get a game with Merfolk Legacy in tonight.
Absolutely, that'll be so much
fun. So,
real quick, I want to say one thing. I want to thank the Hollywood Foreign Press for recognizing Merfolk last night and finally giving Merfolk the Oscar they rightly deserve.
I thought Get Out got the Oscar.
No,
are there more than one?
There is more than one Oscar.
There's more than one Oscar? Jeez. What I'm learning new things.
There's like, I don't know, like 30 Oscars or something they give out. But for best picture, the Merfolk deck won.
That was The Shape of Water, right?
Yes, The Shape of Water.
I knew something about it.
And best deck constructor, Merfolk won that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So Brandon, being the new patron that he is, he came to me again in confidence. Bad idea. Don't message me on Patreon and come to me with a problem. Because he said to me, he says, Kody, I have 62 fish in my aquarium. And I said, hot dang, dude, that's a lot of fish.
So are we talking like a tropical aquarium, or is this like the crappy dollar goldfish you get to feed other fish?
No,
that just poop everywhere.
The reason he only plays Pauper is because he sold all of the rest of his Magic playing collection and went hog wild on one of those super fancy ocean saltwater tanks, and he doesn't know what to do with himself because they're eating him out of house and home.
I can respect that.
Yeah. So
I mean, to keep that tank alive, you almost have to quit your job and like monitor it 24/7.
Yeah, it's a delicate ecosystem. You can't stop.
You get like cleaning pH like every 5 minutes.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. And he said, "Help! I'm being crushed by all these fish. I don't know what to do with my life." And so I don't know how he hosts his show, let alone anything else in his life.
I mean, at least his salty tears fill the tank.
Yeah. So he said, "Can you do me a favor and play or use the number 62 for your random Merfolk card?" So I looked it up, and we got ourselves a doozy here. I think from Legends. I think that's the Legends watermark, isn't it?
That is not the Legends watermark. It is the Weatherlight watermark.
Yeah. So this is Merfolk Traders. It's 1 in a blue for a 1/2 common. So we can pop off with this, I think. And Merfolk Traders says, when Merfolk Traders comes into play, draw a card, then choose a card and discard a card. Or sorry, choose and discard. I'll read a Magic card correctly one day.
So can I say I actually really like this card?
I think it'd be really interesting in like a flashback deck, because I know a lot of the blue-black control decks in Pauper, like they play a lot of cards with flashback. So you can just like draw something useful and stick a thing with flashback, or like a Chainer's Edict or something like that in your graveyard, and just totally wreck somebody.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm thinking like also this is like not a necessarily bad EDH card. I mean, how often do you want like a little just dork that comes into play, draw a card, discard a card, and you have a body to block with, and then you just reanimate your giant thing? So like draw a card, discard your Jin-Gitaxias, and then reanimate it on turn 2 or 3 with this thing, and then have a body sitting there so you can't get edicted.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, this is like legit not that bad. Like we've dealt with some garbage on the random Merfolk, but this one's actually okay, and it has the old school art, which people know that I absolutely love. It looks great, and the flavor text is fantastic. It's, as much as I hate water, I do love fish. Miri of the Weatherlight.
Yeah, I really do like the old frames. I think it's really It's
Yeah.
really interesting, very 90s. I mean, that's something that
Absolutely.
yeah, I think it looks great, and honestly, at 2 mana, it's really not that bad. I don't think. I think this is one of the better ones that we've had. So thank you to Brandon for suggesting this wonderful card, and good luck with all that sushi, man. I don't know what you're gonna do with yourself.
Yeah. And the cool thing about this too is, I mean, I have a pretty extensive encyclopedia of Magic cards in my head. I had no idea this thing existed. So kudos, man. I'm like actually kind of stoked. I'm gonna look through my bulk and see if I have one. If not, I'm probably gonna dish out the 16 cents and buy a copy.
Yeah, at a whopping 16 cents, you're really gonna break the bank.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
before we
That's about my Patreon cut though.
yeah. Yeah, after Patreon takes their cut, we can't even take our money out.
Exactly.
So before we go into our main topic, I want to discuss a little giveaway we're having on our channel. We're going to be giving away, in honor of our upcoming 10th episode, we're going to be giving away a playset of promo open house Silvergill Adepts, as well as 2 foil F&M Merfolk tokens. Now, the way you enter this little contest we're having is you find us on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook as at FishcastMTG, and you retweet or like the post that we have in there. And what we're going to do is we're going to put you all in a little hat, and we're going to draw a random winner. If you are also a patron, then you get an additional entry in for these fancy cards that we're sending out to whoever wins. Now, we can also sign these if you wish, but we wouldn't wish to intentionally devalue them unless you ask us to. Matt has very graciously offered a runner-up prize of having some jank common and uncommon Merfolk be altered by him. So if there's a second runner-up that would like to have some altered Merfolk cards, we will do that as well. And we will be sending those out to the winners. Please like, retweet, and all that fun stuff. And if you'd like an additional entry, please find us on Patreon. It's patreon.com/fishcastmtg to get that second entry into our contest. Thank you very much for everyone who supported us through all this time. And before we get into our main topic, we're going to have a quick ad for Magic with Zuby.
Hey everybody, Zuby here to tell you about my Magic the Gathering podcast, Magic with Zuby. Magic with Zuby is a podcast all about the Magic the Gathering card game. We talk about the latest news and events, the latest cards and decks. We bring on guests from pro players to content creators and more. Join me each week as we keep discovering why Magic the Gathering is the best card game around.
And remember to find Magic with Zuby on Twitter or wherever you find your podcasts. So now, Matt, we're going to be discussing your favorite deck, Tron.
Yes, we are going to talk a little Tron today. Now, I've been joking around on Twitter that I'm going to hijack the podcast, and we're just going to talk Tron, and Kody has no say in it. We're not doing that. We actually have somewhat of a plan today. But so Kody came out and asked me, he's like, do you want to talk Tron? And we can talk Tron versus Fish and Modern and how the matchup is. And I said, Kody, that's like the most boring episode ever because Tron is like a super dog against Fish. So going into it, yes, Tron is not a great matchup against Fish. Fish is going to win probably 70+% of the time. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it is a very popular deck. It's a very powerful deck. And there's a lot of variants of it. So I think just to be a well-rounded Modern player, it's important to actually know what you're going against and the different variants so you can be prepared for what could occur. And you don't get caught with your pants down. Or I guess it would be with your swim trunks down.
One day we will just have fish puns at the ready, and we won't need to correct ourselves. But as Matt said, it's very important to have a good idea of main decks like this, like Tron. Jund is coming back. Death Shadow. Like it's a good idea to have a just an idea of what's happening with those decks because those are commonly played decks. When people watch coverage, you're going to see these decks a lot, and it's kind of good to just have a pre-plan of what to do, for sideboarding, so you can sideboard quickly, and it also kind of helps focus your brain. So when you go up in game 2 and game 3, if there's a game 3, then you know what to look out for generally, and you can position yourself to win a little bit better, I think.
Sure, and especially against a deck like Tron, because there's not many free slots in the deck. Almost every slot is going to be taken up, so there aren't going to be very many surprises. When you find out what version of Tron they're running, it is what it is. So just be prepared.
Yeah, so we're gonna go through, and Matt, being the comprehensive Tron player that he is, I think you have every one of these available to you. Is that correct, or most of them?
I have every one except for one. So when Kody asked me to put the Tron list together, I said, "Which Tron list?" He's like, "Well, can we just run through all of them?" I'm like, I guess so. So I pulled the 5 main ones. I'm sure I know there's mono red, and there's a few other like kind of more fringe goofy ones. But
mono red Tron is not goofy. Don't you dare say that. I will run my Star of Extinction up your fish, but your fish bass. Like you will not see it coming.
If we get enough support for this episode, we will talk mono red Tron. But for today, we are going to discuss the 5 main variants that you're probably going to see more often. Eldrazi Tron, mono blue Tron, green black Tron, green white Tron, and green red Tron. Oh, and I'm sorry, I actually did not have one on the list. Mono green Tron.
Yeah. So, do you want to just go in the order that we have them in the on the list here?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So this is one that honestly I think is the most trouble for fish.
I completely agree. Now this is actually so we're talking Eldrazi Tron. Eldrazi Tron is actually my least favorite version of this deck. But Kody's absolutely right. It's out of all of them, it's probably the most well positioned to beat fish.
Yeah, and that has to do with I think this version of the deck has the highest density of creatures.
Mm-hmm. It does,
and also just huge creatures at that. So it's
so real quick. Let's rewind just a second. So the reason it's called Tron, just for the one person out there who doesn't know, it's because of the 3 Urza lands. And when they are assembled, they are called Urzatron. You have your mine, your tower, and your power plant. And the joke is 1 + 1 + 1 = 7, because when you assemble Tron, you get 2 mana, colorless mana from the power plant, 2 colorless mana from the mine, and then 3 from the tower, which allows. So essentially, it's the quintessential big mana deck of Modern. You quickly play big stupid things.
Yeah, and I think one of the advantages. So one reason why Tron is so susceptible to Merfolk is because we have Spreading Seas. And so when the Tron player is on turn 2 and they've got 2 of their Tron lands, and then they tap out to crack an expedition map or something like that to get their 3rd piece, then you just Spreading Seas one of their pieces.
Correct. And just be losing their lands doesn't always hurt the deck. That's why a big misconception is Blood Moon is a good sideboard card against Tron. And it's really not always. I mean, it can be occasionally. But if Tron can hit 5 or 6 mana naturally, which is entirely possible, then you're still going to be in a lot of trouble. Where decks like Merfolk are really good against it is they are too fast. So 1, they're disrupting the mana base, and 2, they're just putting out so much pressure the Tron deck can't keep up.
Yeah, so that's one thing. Like Aether Vial is really good against Tron. I mean, Aether Vial is one of the best cards in Merfolk, but it's really good because we can keep up mana to do things like Spreading Seas and Spell Pierce and pretty much anything else that we need to do. But then we can just put things into play, and we don't have to worry about keeping up mana when we need it. We can also activate Mutavaults to block if we absolutely have to. we have ways around or to use our mana efficiently, to cast something and then get another body out using Aether Vial is incredible.
Yep. So the most popular card in the deck is probably Karn Liberated, the Planeswalker. He's the one that people hate the most because you can actually play him on turn 3. I'm not going to cover every single card in detail because we'd be here all night, and this is a Merfolk podcast, not a Tron podcast. And I could actually probably talk about this deck for 3 hours, but we will cover Karn. His plus, so he comes out with 6 loyalty, and he has a +4 of target player exiles a card from their hand. Then he has -3 of exile any card in play, and then his ultimate, I believe, is -12, -14, which is you restart the game, but all exile cards that Karn knocked out restart in your control. So I've actually never restarted the game with Karn. As many times I've played him, I've just never had the opportunity to do it. But because you're always either going to be eating from their hand or eating their lands. But a turn 3 Karn playing him is one of the most fun things to do in Magic. Being the person to get played a turn 3 card against is one of the most unfun things in Magic.
Yeah, and so that's kind of one of the staple cards of Tron, and it's definitely something to look out for. But kind of what we're looking to do as a Merfolk deck is to be ahead of them, that when they play Karn, they're forced to play defensively, and they're not able to eat our hand. They're forced to, take out a lord or something. So,
and more often than not against the Merfolk player, all 4 Karns can get boarded out because it's too slow. And by turn 3, you're going to have 2 or 3 Merfolk you have to deal with anyway. So
getting one isn't going to be the end of the world.
One isn't going to be enough. Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So
Eldrazi Tron. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I was just kind of going to go into it a little bit. So one reason that Eldrazi Tron I think is a little bit better than any of the other variants is because it has so many lands that are basically duplicates of the others. So cards like Eldrazi Temple is a soul land. It adds extra mana when you cast Eldrazi. So Endbringer, Reality Smasher, those are all cards that it diversifies your ways to get to big mana.
Correct. Well, and also with Eldrazi Temple, the deck is not dependent on hitting Tron to do things. So, and by turn 3 or 4, you're naturally casting your Thought Knot Seer, your Reality Smasher. So, and these are bodies that are big enough to step in front of a Merfolk, or to be putting enough pressure on the Merfolk player where they have to start leaving some fish back to block.
Yeah. And again, Cavern of Souls in this deck also hurts Merfolk because our counter spells just can't do anything.
Yep. Eldrazi Tron also runs All is Dust, which is 7 mana, exile all colored permanents. So board wipes annihilate Merfolk. It runs Chalice of the Void, so it's not that difficult to get to 4 mana in this deck. So you could put Chalice on 2 or Chalice on 1, and then it's just another card that you actually have to look out for as well. Sorry for the stutter. Is Walking Ballista.
Oh,
which is which just can annihilate fish. And another card that's played in this occasionally, it's not always main boarded, is Basilisk Collar. But Basilisk Collar with Walking Ballista, it gives it Death Touch, and then you gain life off it as well. So it can slowly just start pinging off all your fish.
Yeah, actually, if you look at the videos on our YouTube channel, there's actually a game where I basically just got smashed by a Walking Ballista. He had so much mana that he could just put 2 counters on and then just remove counters, and just kill a lord when I play it. And so it was pretty bad that I would drop 2 lords, and then he would just go add 3 more counters to my Walking Ballista, kill your first lord and then kill the second one because it doesn't pup itself. So it was just dumb. Like if you can't get ahead of a walking ballista, you are going to lose.
Yes. So what you're going to want to do against this deck is you're still going to want to spread and seize the Tron lands because you want to keep them off of hitting their All Is Dust or even Ugin the Spirit Dragon if they're playing Ugin, which again exiles all colored permanents as well. But then it's just you're going to have to try to get past all those Eldrazi that they're going to be coming and they're going to be swarming as well. So this match is going to be a little bit more of a race.
And it's still more important to hit the Urza lands. Is that correct?
Yes.
It still it accelerates to more things like All of Dust and Ugin, like you said, is kind of a big deal. But things like
I mean, unless they're completely off the Urza lands, because sometimes with this deck they're not necessarily trying to assemble Tron as quickly as possible because Eldrazi Temple can be just as fast.
Yeah, but we still, it is just worth considering that there's Wormcoil Engine in this deck. There's Karn, All Is Dust, and those are all things that are much harder to get past.
Yep, this deck also runs Dismember.
Yep.
Which again, spot removal, just enough. So yeah, this is going to be the hardest matchup. And I'm not going to cover the entire sideboard, at least for this deck that we pulled up. But Ratchet Bombs can be in the sideboard, which is another card that Fish is not necessarily wanting to see.
Yeah, Ratchet Bomb and like you said, Basilisk Collar is definitely rough. Because once they can start gaining life, even if all they have out is one Walking Ballista and they can only pump one counter into it every turn, just being able to like ping off your dudes is backbreaking. And once they start gaining life, you're not winning that race.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to the next one that we have here, and we're not going to go over the basics for each of these decks. So
yeah, I'm not going to touch the Tron lands again. We're not going to bring up Karn again. We're not going to bring up Ugin again, even though I slid by him. But we're going to talk about the variants at this point. So the next deck that we want to mention is Mono Blue Tron, which this is the weird cousin Eddie of the Tron family. Now, you're not going to see this one as often. It's traditionally known as the worst version of Tron, but it's also the most budget version of Tron. So the Tron lands themselves being printed in Chronicles are only like 25 cents each. So if you take out the Karns and you take out a few of the other more expensive cards, it's not that expensive of a deck. So a lot of people who are starting to get into Modern, they want a competitive deck, but they don't want to spend $700 to $1,000 on a deck. They'll put Mono Blue Tron together for a couple $100.
Yeah, and this is a very interesting list. I think it's a little bit more tempo-y in that it tries to protect itself a lot more in the early game than basically any other version of Tron.
Correct. So it is a control deck that tries to assemble Tron and win with big fatties. So the land base is a little bit weirder. It runs Talaria West, which allows you to fetch out a land. It runs Oboro, it runs Gemstone Caverns, and it runs Academy Ruins, which is actually a really good card in this because there's so many artifacts. And Academy Ruins lets you put an artifact on the top of your library. But then the spells, it runs Condescend, which is
an X counter spell, basically.
Yeah, thank you. It does a little bit else.
You scry too.
Thank you.
It runs a Cyclonic Rift. It runs Remand. It runs some Repeals. So which is an X bounce spell, and you draw off it. Like this card has so much early interaction, returning spells to your hand, returning creatures to your opponent's hand. Like it does so much.
And then it draws a lot of cards too, because it plays Thirst for Knowledge, which it allows you to draw 3 cards and discard 2 cards unless you discard an artifact. But there's so many artifacts, you always have something to discard. And you have Academy Ruins, so even if you discard a good artifact, you can get it right back.
Yeah, and then you can always Talaria West to get your Academy Ruins. This is a very synergistic deck. It's working to protect its lands. It's working to protect what it puts into play. It
wants you to time walk yourself, or it wants to time walk by turning your turn off by either bouncing your creature or putting on the top of your library or just countering whatever you're playing.
Yeah, so this is a very interesting version. Again, running some cool stuff like Oblivion Stone.
Yeah, well, Oblivion
Yeah.
Stone's more of a bread and butter card, but you're going to see that more in the traditional 2-color Tron builds.
Yeah. So it does run a lot of cool stuff, like you said, Thirst for Knowledge, even Supreme Will from Hour of Devastation. Like, this is an interesting deck, and this. Sorry, go
I
ahead.
was going to say the win condition in this deck is great. So it does have the Ballista and it does have the Worm Coil, but it plays Platinum Angel, which is 7 mana for a 4/4. You can't with flying, but you can't lose the game, and your opponent can't win the game. So that one's fun. But the one of the coolest combos is the Mindslaver combo. So essentially what occurs is you play Mindslaver and you tap it and sack it, and you control your opponent's next turn. But if you have Academy runs, you can take your Mindslaver and put it right back on the top of your library, draw it, replay it, and control your opponent's turn again.
Yeah, and with Mindslaver, you basically just win, especially when you have Academy Ruins. You repeatedly take your opponent's turns, and that's it.
Yep.
We're kind of okay with Mono Blue too because it runs islands, so we have natural island walk often, so we're totally fine with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next 4 versions, the green red, the green black, the green white, and the mono green, are all very similar. So they're going to run the same package of Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, Karn, Ugin, Worm Coil Engine, Chromatic Sphere, Chromatic Star, Expedition Map, O-Stone. There's really one or two slots in the main and the sideboard where it's going to be different. Now, I do want to mention O-Stone. We kind of talked about that before because that's the one thing the Tron player is desperately looking for against Fish because it blows up all permanents. And it really just wants to reset the game on Fish. So you have to be wary of that. And most traditional Tron lists are going to run 3. So where you're going to run into differences is the green-black version is going to run Fatal Pushes and Collective Brutalities. And then the white version is going to run Path to Exile. Mm-hmm. And the red version is going to run some sort of Pyroclasm.
Yeah, and these are all cards that are incredibly good against Merfolk. So it's just kind of like you have to suss out what your opponent's doing, and then you can kind of work against countering those things.
Yeah.
Playing around them, rather.
Yep. So the red version is going to be the worst one against Merfolk because the Pyroclasm can potentially sweep the board unless it's drawn later in the game, and the Lords have already pumped him up to a bigger butt than 2. But I would say the weakest of those against Merfolk is actually my personal favorite, which is the green-white version, because Path to Exile helps thin the Merfolk player's deck by letting them fetch out a land, and you're hitting only one Merfolk. So the Fatal Push is much better. It's a better version of Path to Exile, and the Collective Brutality is going to be a little bit better there. The reason I preferred the green-white version is against other bad matchups such as Burn. I have a better sideboard with white.
Yeah, that's definitely something to take into consideration. Burn is probably but Burn is probably something that you'll see a lot, kind of at local events. It still does peak itself around GPs and all that, higher end events. But Burn is definitely something to take into consideration, when playing a deck like Tron, where you need to get to the end game.
Yeah. So probably what's going to happen against Tron with all these Tron lists for the sideboard is going to be the Tron player is going to bring in their Thrag Tusks, most commonly known as Thrag Daddy, because what you're going to want to do is when he comes into play, you gain life, and you want to get as much life as possible against the Fish deck.
Yes, definitely.
And then you have a beater as well. So and then you're also they're going to bring in Nature's Claim. So Nature's Claim is 1 mana instant, destroy target enchantment or artifact. Its controller gains 4 life. Now, what the Tron player is going to do is they're going to play one of their eggs, and they're going to Nature's Claim their own artifact to gain 4 life. Because the Tron player is trying to buy time to get to their mana to play something huge. Because
Or they could just hit Aether Vial.
Or you can hit Aether Vial. It's early game. I'm talking kind of more like turn 2.
Mid to late games, yeah.
Yeah. Because against Fish, if the Tron player is not hitting a Worm Coil Engine or a Ugin or a Oblivion Stone, they're gonna lose.
Yeah.
So those 3 versions, and I don't want the episode to go on forever, so I'm gonna kind of move on. But those 3 versions, the green black and the green red, are probably the most common. The most popular currently though is the mono green. Now the mono green, most Tron decks run only 1 basic land, and it's a basic forest. The mono green runs 5 basic forests, and the reason is that we're seeing a lot more Ghost Quarters and a lot more Field of Ruins right now, and you don't want those to be strip mines against the Tron player.
Definitely not.
But against Merfolk, they should be super happy to see this, because mono green has almost no answers because it loses the spot removal. It runs spatial contortions in the sideboard, but that's probably not going to be enough.
Yeah. And I mean, pretty much the only thing that we really have to worry about with green is World Breaker killing our Mutavaults. And even then, that's not like the biggest concern.
Yeah, I mean, World Breaker, usually against Fish, anything that's going to be that converted mana cost, I'm most likely going to be boarding out, and I'm going to be putting all my eggs in the Worm Coil basket.
Yeah, Worm Coil is definitely better against Merfolk.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at Merfolk playing against Tron, I'm gonna go off my lists here that I use, and I definitely have to look at these and kind of update them a little bit, I think. So one thing we are going to get rid of in pretty much against all versions of Tron, I think, except for maybe Mono Blue Tron, is Curse Catcher. Now, the thing is Curse Catcher doesn't hit a lot of the removal that Tron has. So their removal in most cases in Tron, maybe green, black, or blue versions, and I think red as well. But the big thing is like their removal is Walking Ballista. Their removal is Oblivion Stone. Their removal Ugin, Karn. Like these are things that Curse Catcher doesn't hit. And so I'd say black has Fatal Push, like Matt discussed, and red has Pyroclasm, but honestly, like it doesn't hit enough of their threats for it to be good enough, I think. So one thing that
if you can catch him with the Tron player with a Curse Catcher in game 1, awesome.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, other than that, I mean, yeah, Cody's 100% right. Take it out. It's not doing anything. It's a Merfolk of Pearl Trident.
Yeah, and it's good because it's a body, but honestly, we do much better with a Ceremonious Rejection out of the sideboard. So Ceremonious Rejection is a blue mana for an instant, which makes it really easy to hold up. So you can take a turn half off by not, playing a 1-drop, and just always keep up 1 blue mana for Ceremonious Rejection, and you're set for the rest of the game. You can counter Eldrazi, you can counter Oblivion Stone, you can counter Karn, you can
Expedition Map is actually a good counter.
Yeah.
Because most Tron players are only going to be playing with 2 lands in their opening hand, because they have so many ways to fetch out lands. So a lot of times, if on turn 1 they're trying to play an Expedition Map and you can counter that, you might be just knocking them off at least 1 or 2 turns because they're missing land drops.
Yeah, definitely. So Ceremonious Rejection is definitely something that we want to bring in. But we also have 2 other different counter spells that we can bring in different situations. So one of them is Negate, which counters target non-creature spell. But I definitely prefer Unified Will in this situation. It's 1 in a blue, and it counters target spell if you control more creatures than that spell's controller. So hear me out on this. Tron does play creatures, but it doesn't play a lot of creatures.
More often than not, most Tron decks have like between 6 to 8 creatures in the entire deck.
Yeah, in Merfolk, we're running 30 minimum. Like, so we're going to be ahead. And if we aren't, we have Aether Vial to put something into play just so we get them, with Unified Will. And Unified Will does cost 2 mana, but it is a hard counter. So that is definitely something to consider for playing against Tron. And then the other big takeaway I think for this discussion is we're not playing this like an aggro deck. We have to be very careful of how you play against Tron. You have to be able to, counter the right creatures or counter the right spells.
You want to gain board advantage, but then you don't want to overplay your hand, because once you have board advantage and you've turned Tron land into an island and you've activated Island Walk, there's not going to be as much the Tron player can do. But because the Tron player at that point is just biding their time to hit an Ugin or a O Stone or something along those lines. So they're trying to reset your clock.
Yeah, and
just don't overplay your hand.
Yeah, don't overplay your hand. You've got counter spells. We've got ways to bounce tapped creatures. We have ways to tap creatures. So if we're not even able to get, Spreading Seas online, there are ways that we can tap creatures down so we can just swim right past them. And it's totally fine.
Think about it. I mean, if you have Spreading Seas or Seas Claim or whatever island creating enchantment you have, you're forcing the Tron player to wait minimum till turn 6, and that's if they don't miss a land drop, to be able to play any kind of threat. I'd potentially turn 5 for an O Stone. So you have plenty of time, because by turn 2 or 3, you can have potentially 4/4 Merfolk with your lords in play.
Yep.
So you've put them on a 5-turn clock.
And then obviously, just really quick to wrap this up, Tropical Merfolk has where did I put it? It has naturalize effects, so we can side those in. Again, just really good against Tron. That's a nice walking ballista. Nature's Claim.
Yeah.
and that's not saying they're done, but that is definitely, it can put the hurt on them when they take their whole turn to play one thing and then you kill it. So that's just one advantage that Tropical Merfolk has over Mono Blue in that area. But I think that they're both good decks against Tron.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's one of those things, as we said before. When Tron sees a Jund player or an Abzan player, they're going to smile, because more often than not, they're going to win. As a Fish player, when you see Tron across the board, smile, because you're most likely going to win.
Yeah, don't think you're going to win automatically, but you are technically favored. So I think that's a pretty good overview of Tron. Matt, did you get it out of your system? Do you think that'll hold you for at least another 10 episodes?
Maybe. We'll see. Please talk to me on Twitter about Tron. I slammed through the different versions. So if you have questions, I've been playing this deck for. I played it actually in Standard with original Ravnica, way back when it was legal in 9th edition. But I've been playing it in Modern for at least 5 years as my primary deck. So I have some experience with it.
Yeah, so if you have any further questions about Tron, please hit Matt up at MatthewCaudill8 on Twitter. You can contact me about any fish-related questions about the Tron matchup. We're both pretty comfortable with both decks, I think. I mean, at least to discuss it in a general sense. And as always, you can contact us on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook as @FishcastMTG. I should be finishing up the standard Merfolk gameplay videos here soon. They'll be up on the YouTube. Our cover art was made by Tessa and Hunter Pruitt. Another way to contact us, if you have a longer question, is to contact us via email at fishcastmtg@gmail.com. And remember, we are on Patreon as patreon.com/fishcastmtg. It might be a / I don't know.
Just keep hitting keys until you find us.
Yeah, you'll stumble across us. There aren't too many Merfolk podcasts out there. It's kind of the benefit of being the first ones to do something like this. And remember we're blazing saddles. And if you like what we're doing here, please rate, subscribe in the Apple or Google Play podcast app stores, or wherever you find us on the internet to listen to. Matt, This was a good episode, I think.
I had fun. I hope you.
I did, and I hope this podcast sounds a lot better than it did last week. I think it will.
I apologize for yelling at people last week.
Yeah, that was entirely my fault. I didn't save the original file, so unfortunately that one is just going to be the dead episode for us. And
on the wall of shame.
Yeah, the wall of shame. And remember, we're going to put out a tweet on Thursday where you can win a playset of Promo Silver Go adapts. How cool is that?
That's so cool.
And we could even devalue them by signing them. Yeah, or a crappy common. A Carpy common.
Alter common.
A Carpy common. And so thank you very much, guys. We'll see you next week.
All right, have a good one, guys.